He's really high and violent too. His addictions killed a few. Coke and weed and beer and meth. He's a fucking horrid mess. He really thinks that trains can talk. Doing drugs around the clock. Doing so much he could die. Alec Baldwin's high.
And hello everyone, and welcome to my Season 8 re-rankings, the start of the hit era, a very controversial era in TTTE. By the way, if you can hear my fan whirring away in the background, it's too hot, alright?
I am fucking melting! My tits are turning into my nuts!
Now we all know that the hit era is inferior to the golden age of Thomas, but how well does it stand up? That's what we'll be finding out today. But to get to the diamonds in the shit, we have to travel through some awful episodes. No better place to start than the beginning, with number 26, Thomas and the Circus. Nothing makes me feel quite as numb as Thomas and the Circus. It does nothing new with the typical Thomas learns about friendship trope in the three strikes formula. Not even clowns or jugglers can entertain me because there's nothing that feels different. All this episode is a weaker Thomas and the Rainbow with a less cheesy ending. Nothing redeems this one, and yet nobody speaks about how awful this one is. I guess that could be down to how insignificant it is. Other people probably prefer this one to the ones that make them frustrated, but such numbness makes me more frustrated than with the ball aches we call episodes to begin with. Why did this get approved? Number 25, Too Hot for Thomas. This is just the same thing. Too Hot for Thomas doesn't really do anything new with the all jobs are important trope. The only reason I put this episode higher than the other is because I used to watch it on the Audible with the Steam Team DVD and thought it was okay. What a fool I was. There's also a decent beach station set that I find cute, I guess. Other than that, there's nothing to say. It was kind of really a snorefest that felt like it was never going to end. The only reason I gave it the 0.5 was purely for nostalgia and that stupid ass crash, I guess you could call it. Is it really a crash? I don't think so. Number 24, Thomas, Emily and the Snowplough. Now we get to the ones I can actually talk about. This irritating piece of dog shit was made by Satan himself, and I'm sure even he fears what he created. Yeah, there's nice winter sets, but Emily, man, what a bitch. I'm totally on Thomas's side of the dispute in this one, even though the writers seem to reward Emily's bossy behaviour, which I don't understand. If I had someone ordering me around when they had no place to, I'd be pissed too. Usually episodes that get me this worked up are at number 26, but the fact this isn't tells you everything you need to know about the season and the upcoming ones. This episode makes me want to perish and is a huge stain on this mostly okay season. Number 23, You Can Do It, Toby. When I find people that defend episodes like this, I die inside. What do people gain from watching this? It's got an okay moral, but Toby's so sorry for himself that it's hard to root for him. Gordon's also an arsehole, being so backward thinking when I thought we got over Toby's boxy appearance in season 1. They basically just copy Edward and Gordon and pretend that they did something different because it's Toby this time. I must say, Thomas is decent here and the actual climax is well paced, but seriously, Toby is such a hateable protagonist, and as such, I hate him. The ending does okay, but the beginning section is just so ugly. Number 22, Chickens to School. A quite humorous concept that was executed poorly. No, not Misty on and Rescue, but this season 8 episode. This episode is a prime example of how the three strikes formula ruins everything it touches. If we'd focused more on the carnage Thomas had caused instead of repeating the same thing 3 fucking times, I may have liked this one. What could have been a great few scenes of chaos from Thomas's actions was shortened into 3 quick glimpses for the writer's convenience because they're lazy. And if you don't believe me, watch this episode 3 fucking times and try saying it got better every single time. I fucking dare you. It pained me to watch this. Number 21, Percy's Whistle. Wow, this one was pretty drastic for a second episode and definitely pointed out how the hit era was going to be running from now on. The first episode, Thomas and the Tuba, was pretty tame compared to the more telling one here. Percy's such a dickhead here that it hurts. Poor Bertie. Him paying out the diesels in the beginning should have been the story here, not all this excess needless shit. I do, however, like the snowball scene and the sets in general. The resolution isn't too sloppy either. There's some good stuff here, but the base plot is so flawed and poignant this has to go low down. Number 20, Don't Tell Thomas. I hate the base concept here. When these overused hide a surprise from a character who grows cross about the secret tropes he used, I can't help but be frustrated. I automatically relate with Thomas here and can feel his anger, especially because the engines are so rubbish at keeping this surprise from him. They act like actual toddlers and clearly only act like this so the writers and crew can keep this story going as opposed to just binning it to make an actual good one. The payoff at the end is alright, whilst not too entertaining. It is sweet, but there's not a whole lot to gain from this fairly agonising episode. Number 19, Emily's Adventure. Emily's Adventure is anything but. The moral's ham-fisted, and Emily's made out to be a total arsehole to suit said moral. Nothing here saves this episode except the sets, which are absolutely amazing. The way the crew handle this big, frightening storm and the fallout of it is absolutely brilliant. Also, Elizabeth's here, which is fun. She's also surprisingly in her old character, which is mind-boggling to me. You change the dynamics of your entire core cast, but this barely shown side character gets to keep her traits just fine. I guess it's because she doesn't affect much, a lot like Salty in that regard. If it weren't for the abysmal writing, I'd consider putting this higher, but here it shall stay. Number 18, Thomas gets it right. This is your run-of-the-mill Thomas episode where he goes too fast and has to learn to take care. The inside shots of the eggs getting smashed are a well-needed change in the visuals department, but this is so bog standard that there's not much enjoyment to be had. I believe I first watched this episode on the Incredibles DVD with a bunch of Hit Entertainment's other properties, and I can say this decently shows how Thomas and Friends was at the time, although I would have preferred other episodes further up on the list to be the one on there. Number 17, Spick and Span. The three strikes formula really gets on my wick here as we just travel to the same bloody place again and again, the washdown. The pacing is so boring that I feel my life force being sucked out of me via a plastic straw, and overall, the majority of this episode is pretty dull. However, that ending scene with James causing coal dust to fly everywhere, Gordon blowing coal dust from his funnel, and Thomas and Percy winning first prize ends the episode on a high, and we all know I'm a sucker for a good ending. That saves the episode from being lower down. Number 16, As Good as Gordon. Oh, an episode where Emily takes the express. What an interesting concept. I wonder if we'll see Emily overcome Gordon's superiority complex. Or maybe she helps Gordon pull it after he breaks down. Let's see what the actual plot is, shall we? She messes up 3 times and ends up running out of water. Are you kidding? Do you see? Do you see how much the writers could have done to make this a good episode? Granted, those ideas were still kind of basic, but still, it was better than the garbage we got in the end. There's some okay scenes, like Emily down by the canal. I really do love that set. Or the crossroads where Emily insults Edward, but it's just not the best, and there's not much more to say other than that. Number 15, Percy's Big Mistake. What a chaotic mess. The set design and special effects work are top notch. Thomas and Friends is becoming really technical this season, and I enjoy it. However, the writing suffers a lot. Percy gets scared that Sir Topham Hatt, the Fat Controller, the one that's hell-bent on preservation, will scrap him. Yep, and then there's this stupid hiding segment stuff that's okay, but it messes up the entire pacing, really. It just feels as though we're moving from one problem to the next here, and it doesn't flow well, really. This episode could have been saved by the ending, which is what I was looking forward to, but it was pretty bland to me. The episode is problematic, but it's not the worst offender. Number 14, Thomas and the Tuba. For the first episode of the series, this episode wasn't actually too bad. It's slow and boring at times, but I can say this is the first one I actually like, which is kind of sad, really. We get to see the road vehicles for a change, though, and that's what I like. The plot is basic but endurable, and we get some cameos from Bertie, Elizabeth, and weirdly Trevor, of all road vehicles, him. Not complaining, but it's just strange. Also, do I need to mention how close this episode is to the season 5 episode Lady Hat's birthday party, except there's no fun characters and it takes all of the good parts of the episode and locks them in the fucking bin. But this episode gives us a good showcase of sets and locations, and it does well as an introductory episode. However, it just can't compare to the stronger ones on the list. Number 13, James gets a new coat. This episode is actually a valiant attempt. I feel like it tries to do something impactful, and for the most part it succeeds. You feel bad for Percy and you really dislike James for not helping, but it all feels in character. Shorten the runtime and redraft the scripts a bit and someone can make a classic style version of this episode. By the way, I love that set by the canal. I know I already said that, but I must stress how it makes the world feel that much more lived in and feels some satisfaction within me. Overall, this episode is definitely a somewhat valiant attempt at doing a truly decent episode. Too bad it's pretty bland. Number 12, Thomas and the Firework Display. Thomas and the Firework Display is okay. It's another one that's not outwardly harmful. The story's fine and the characters are decent. What I love about this episode, though, is all down to the visuals. The fireworks look beautiful, and there are some very unique shots of Thomas's driver setting off the fireworks that really stick in your mind. The suspense the episode attempts is also pretty impressive for something in the hit hour. Like, holy shit, this episode is genuinely impressive despite all of its minor hiccups and the slow, dull beginning. Number 11, Emily's New Route. I think this episode is pretty infamous amongst the fandom, and for good reason. This really does well. The sets, the character, and the ending is all done very well. Every avenue is explored and the pacing is decent. I'd say the one part that lets the episode down is the climax. It's way too over the top for what it is, and in a slower kind of episode it is pretty ridiculous. However, it's still entertaining, and for that I can forgive it at least a little bit. The Loch Ness Monster plotline that weaves itself throughout is also pretty amusing and is brought back for the end, also providing a layer and reason for every one of Emily's actions. It's very impressive because of this. Number 10, Fish. Fish is superb. It brings back Thomas's hatred of fish, some really iconic and memorable characters, Saucy and Arthur, and provides some great entertainment value. If one episode here would have been in a season 8 where Hit wasn't around, I think this episode would have been it. The simplicity of the story is also very good, providing more enjoyment. Where Emily's New Route had an underlying plot, Fish has plain, simple, and easy storytelling, which is good because it means it doesn't get ridiculous. Even the crash isn't that ridiculous. If you guys have seen the slimmed down classic style of this episode, it's even better. I go so far as to say it rivals season 4's Fish, although comparing the two might make more people upset with me. Either way, I love season 8's Fish, and I think more people should. Number 9, Gordon Takes Charge. Gordon Takes Charge is a surprisingly good episode. Percy's motif in the Hit era is mail train, so him learning to pull coaches again is a very interesting and well done idea, especially when paired up with the likes of Gordon, who is very well written even in season 8. Despite it never being used to its full potential in other episodes, the concept and plot really stand strong here. The crash and whole climax is kind of wasted, it's no snow engine but it suffices, although I still believe that Henry would have been a better fit for the role. Imagine this and the next episode on the list being a two-parter. No matter the protagonist's choice, it's a definite series great. Number 8, Henry and the Wishing Tree. Some characters in the Hit era get multiple episodes like Thomas, Percy and Emily. Others get brushed to the side and get one episode bare minimum. A great example of characters treated like this is Henry. Henry gets one episode per season, and when they get it right, they absolutely nail it. This episode is one of those that does this. Henry thinks his favourite tree has some legend attached to it and will get him what he asks for. He gets the express, but then wishes everything back to normal when he realises he likes things the way they are. A very fun, dynamic and unique moral that I don't think is ever done again. There's a lot of great shots too, like the peaceful forest and inside the buffet car. Season 8 really did a number on itself there, but I wish, pun intended, that they'd leave the mystery of the tree more open as Sir Topham shuts it down. Oh well, onwards we go. Number 7, Percy and the Magic Carpet. For the last episode of the series, they really pull it out of the bag. The mystical shots of the floating carpet make it seem alive, but everyone else claiming it's the wind makes for a good debate. Logic or creativity? The different sides of the brain clashing to leave the audience wanting more. The fact the writers left the mystery more open this time helps it a great deal too. This is what Henry and the Wishing Tree should have done. Also, Murdoch's here for some reason. Yay! I didn't really care about him. But the main point is the element that they do right is done really well here, and I love it for that. Number 6, James Goes Too Far. James being a dick is funny, naturally, so having an episode revolving around it is almost comical. Obviously, he learns from his mistakes, and that helps a lot, but the thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is the use of Diesel. It's very clear he's been babified through the way he reacts to breaking down. In the classic series, he was always more annoyed and angry in defeat, in contrast to now, where he's sad and miserable about breaking down. Who is this dude? He's had so many changes and reworkings that I've lost count at this point. This one feature taints the episode a bit, but it's still strong enough to stay in the top 10. Number 5, Thomas to the Rescue. Thomas's character is so pure and innocent here that it's hard not to root for this little scamp. My guy gets mocked by Diesel, who undergoes some major boss-ass bitch karma, and so Thomas decides to help him. What a sweet dude. The moral is obviously the standout of the episode, but a few other things I liked was the special effect of Diesel's engine profusely smoking. Yes, I know what you're all thinking, and I say that just because the show's aimed at 4-year-olds doesn't mean we have to become them. Fart jokes are only funny if they're in my nutshell videos and nowhere else. Me a year ago was a lot more childish, I must say. Also, the scene where Thomas is paranoid about being scrapped is such a powerful scene. Season 3 wishes it had the bollocks to do that. All in all, it's just a juicy, jam-packed episode with great scenes at every turn. Number 4, Thomas Saves the Day. Everyone loves this Season 8 gem, and for good reason, however I do believe it is not the best of the series. It expands upon the show's lore by introducing this new station, Kelsthorpe, and has some great character expansion to Thomas, with Annie and Clarabelle having a use for once, surprisingly. They keep Thomas calm, and when they aren't there, Thomas has to learn to tackle the bend by himself, presenting a well-done moral about learning independence. To be honest, I think Percy is the more childlike, independent character and should have gotten an episode like this, but I doubt it would have been so memorable and impactful, especially due to this glorious runaway segment at the end. Number 3, Squeak, Rattle and Roll. Again, another really good episode that many people seem to enjoy. This is essentially an episode that presents Gordon's old age as as he begins squeaking and how he deals with this. It totally feels like how Gordon would react, and his interaction with Diesel at the start of the episode does help push the narrative forwards to make Gordon think Sir Topham will get rid of him if he has a problem. This line of thinking, whilst not really that believable, works somewhat and is really just my main problem with the episode. Outside of that, there are no problems, just some good fun and great character development. Number 2, Edward the Great. I think out of all of the Edward episodes in the hit era, this one is the best. Edward the Great has Edward of all engines race Spencer and win in this tortoise and the hare style format. Whilst obvious and predictable, it works because the character personalities match the original Fable so well. Part of me wishes that they did this Fable retelling BS more, because then it creates some absolute gems like this episode. Spencer is so good here, and the beautiful music that picks up speed as Edward gets faster and faster is one of those details that shine and make this episode stand out. This episode's fun, exciting, and makes you feel so proud for Edward. What a fun ride. Number 1, Halloween. Atmosphere is the thing that is key for the spookier and darker episodes like Stepney Gets Lost and Ghost Train, and here it's so prominent and strong that it makes this episode my favourite of the season. Everyone plays their part so well that it's such a fun experience. The runaway is the obvious best part, but the creativity and build up to that point is a gem to sit through. Stepney Gets Lost was really dark, and I'll always love it for that reason, but here the playful and more kid-friendly tone is kept amongst this spookier atmosphere, and it makes the episode quite impressive tonally. I do have one tiny problem, and it's that the ghost at the end tries to make the audience second guess itself. We always knew Emily was under that tarp, so why are we now made to believe ghosts exist? It's so annoying. I just wish they would cut that part out, but apart from those minuscule 5 seconds that don't matter, this episode is absolutely amazing, 100%. So what do I think of season 8? Well, it's certainly not Thomas. The first 7 seasons stuck to the core beliefs of the book, despite the latter seasons not having any material from said books, but it had potential. There are some really good episodes in this season and some really atrocious ones. I think season 8 is the most mixed season I've ever seen, and is somehow the most baffling roller coaster of a season, despite only the Steam team being the focus, and being quite tame in comparison to seasons like season 5. But nevertheless, I can't help but love it. Just look at the pros for 2 minutes and you'll realise it may not be the same, but it's certainly better than what's to come in about 5 years. Not bad season 8, you impressed me. Also, should probably have mentioned that these scores are relative to the era season 8 belongs to, so no, I do not think that Halloween is as good as Toby and the Flood, and Thomas and the Guard is nowhere near as awful as Thomas and the Circus. But that's all I have time for today, so I'll end the video with an old favourite clip of mine from the original season 8 review. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
What have I become? Bop it, my sweetest friend.
Kevin, shut the fuck up.
Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you